Good afternoon, grizzly bears. It's a lovely, cool afternoon where I am. I had some nice time outside in the garden this morning, shoveling compost. And now I'm ready for some relaxation. So, we're going to keep reading poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. We're about halfway through his poems. Maybe a little more. He wrote an awful lot of poems. I think we've been going for a month or more on Longfellow. Eventually, we'll get it done. So, I left off yesterday with a poem called Monte Cassino. Beautiful valley, through whose verdant meads, unheard, the Garigliano glides along. The Lyris, nurse of rushes and of reeds, the river taciturn of classic song. The land of labor and the land of rest, where medieval towns are white on all the hillsides, and where every mountain's crest is an Etrurian or a Roman wall. There is Alagna, where Pope Boniface was dragged with contumely from his throne. Sciarra Colonna was that day's disgrace the pontiff's only, or in part thine own. There is Soprano, where a renegade was each Apulian, as great Dante saith, when Manfred by his men-at-arms betrayed, spurred on to Benevento and to death. There is Aquinum, the old Volscian town, where Juvenal was born, whose lurid light still hovers o'er his birthplace, like the crown of splendor seen o'er cities in the night. Doubled the splendor is, that in its streets the angelic doctor, as a schoolboy played, and dreamed, perhaps, the dreams that he repeats, in ponderous folios for scholastics made. And there uplifted, like a passing cloud that pauses on a mountain summit high, Monte Cassino's convent rears its proud and venerable walls against the sky. Well, I remember how on foot I climbed the stony pathway leading to its gate. Above, the convent bells for vespers chimed. Below, the darkening town grew desolate. Well, I remember the low arch and dark, the courtyard with its well, the terrace wide, from which far down the valley, like a park, veiled in the evening mists, was dim descried. The day was dying, and with feeble hands caressed the mountain tops, the vales between, darkened the river in the meadowlands, sheathed itself as a sword, and was not seen. The silence of the place was like a sleep, so full of rest it seemed each passing tread was a reverberation from the deep recesses of the ages that are dead. For more than 13 centuries ago, Benedict, fleeing from the gates of Rome, a youth disgusted with its vice and woe, sought in these mountain solitudes a home. He founded here his convent and his rule of prayer and work, and counted work as prayer. The pen became a clarion, and his school flamed like a beacon in the midnight air. What though Boccaccio, in his reckless way, mocking the lazy brotherhood, deplores the illuminated manuscripts that lay, torn and neglected on the dusty floors? Boccaccio was a novelist, a child of fancy and of fiction at the best. This the urbane librarian said, and smiled, incredulous, as at some idle jest. Upon such themes as these, with one young friar, I sat conversing late into the night, till in its cavernous chimney the wood fire had burnt its heart out like an anchorite. And then, translated in my convent cell, myself yet not myself in dreams I lay, and as a monk who hears the matin bell, started from sleep. Already it was day. From the high window I beheld the scene on which Saint Benedict so oft had gazed, the mountains and the valleys in the sheen of the bright sun, and stood as one amazed. Gray mists were rolling, rising, vanishing. The woodlands glistened with their jeweled crowns. Far off the mellow bells began to ring for matins in the half-awakened towns. The conflict of the present and the past, the ideal and the actual in our life, as on a field of battle held me fast, where this world and the next world were at strife. For as the valley from its sleep awoke, I saw the iron horses of the steam toss to the morning air their plumes of smoke, and woke as one awaketh from a dream. Hello, Cookie. Nice to see you here. We are having, once again, some Henry Wadsworth Longfellow poems. I keep going back and forth on whether I actually enjoy Longfellow or not. Sometimes I feel like I do, and sometimes I feel like I don't. The next poem is called Amalfi, and I'm pretty sure it's not the Amalfi that people talk about these days, the anime character. This is a different Amalfi. Sweet the memory is to me of a land beyond the sea, where the waves and mountains meet, where amid her mulberry trees sits Amalfi in the heat, bathing ever her white feet in the tideless, summer seas. In the middle of the town, from its fountains in the hills, tumbling through the narrow gorge, the Canetto rushes down, turns the great wheels of the mills, lifts the hammers of the forge. 'Tis a stairway, not a street, that ascends the deep ravine, where the torrent leaps between rocky walls that almost meet. Toiling up from stair to stair, peasant girls their burdens bear, sunburnt daughters of the soil, stately figures tall and straight. What inexorable fate dooms them to this life of toil? Lord of vineyards and of lands, far above the convent stands. On its terraced walk aloof leans a monk with folded hands, placid, satisfied, serene, looking down upon the scene, over wall and red-tiled roof. Wandering unto what good end all this toil and traffic tend, and why all men cannot be free from care and free from pain, and the sordid love of gain, and as indolent as he. Where now are the frightened barks from the marts of east and west? Where the knights in iron sarks, journeying to the Holy Land, glove of steel upon the hand, cross of crimson on the breast? Where the pomp of camp and court? Where the pilgrims with their prayers? Where the merchants with their wares, and their gallant brigantines, sailing safely into port, chased by corsair Algerines? Vanished like a fleet of cloud, like a passing trumpet blast, are those splendors of the past. And the commerce and the crowd, fathoms deep beneath the seas, lie the ancient wharves and quays, swallowed by the engulfing waves. Silent streets and vacant halls, ruined roofs and towers and walls, hidden from all mortal eyes, deep the sunken city lies. Even cities have their graves. This is an enchanted land. Round the headlands far away sweeps the blue Salernian bay with its sickle of white sand. Further still, and furthermost on the dim, discovered coast, Paestum with its ruins lies, and its roses all in bloom seem to tinge the fatal skies of that lonely land of doom. On his terrace, high in air, nothing doth the good monk care for such worldly themes as these. From the garden, just below, little puffs of perfume blow, and a sound is in his ears of the murmur of the bees in the shining chestnut trees. Nothing else he heeds or hears. All the landscape seems to swoon in the happy afternoon. Slowly o'er his senses creep the encroaching waves of sleep, and he sinks as sank the town, unresisting, fathoms down into caverns cool and deep, walled about with drifts of snow, hearing the fierce north wind blow, seeing all the landscape white and the river cased in ice. comes this memory of delight, comes this vision unto me of a long-lost paradise in the land beyond the sea. Next up, we have a poem called The Sermon of St. Francis. Up soared the lark into the air, a shaft of song, a winged prayer, as if a soul released from pain were flying back to heaven again. St. Francis heard it was to him an emblem of the seraphim, the upward motion of the fire, the light, the heat, the heart's desire. Around Assisi's convent gate, the birds, God's poor who cannot wait, from moor and mere and darksome wood came flocking for their dole of food. O brother birds, St. Francis said, ye come to me and ask for bread, but not with bread alone today shall ye be fed and sent away. Ye shall be fed, ye happy birds, with manna of celestial words, not mine, though mine they seem to be, not mine, though they be spoken through me. O doubly are ye bound to praise the great Creator in your lays. He giveth you your plumes of down, your crimson hoods, your cloaks of brown. He giveth you your wings to fly, and breathe a purer air on high, and careth for you everywhere. Who for yourselves so little care. With flutter of swift wings and songs, together rose the feathered throngs, and singing scattered far apart, deep peace was in St. Francis' heart. He knew not if the brotherhood his homily had understood. He only knew that to one ear the meaning of his words was clear. Next up we have Belisarius. I am poor and old and blind. The sun burns me and the wind blows through the city gate and covers me with dust from the wheels of the august Justinian the Great. It was for him I chased the Persians o'er wild and waste, as general of the East. Night after night I lay in their camps of yesterday. Their forage was my feast. For him with sails of red and torches at masthead, piloting the great fleet, I swept the Afric coasts and scattered the Vandal hosts like dust in a windy street. For him I won again the Ausonian realm and reign, Rome and Parthenope, and all the land was mine, from the summits of Apennine to the shores of either sea. For him in my feeble age I dared the battle's rage to save Byzantium's state. When the tents of Zabergan like snowdrifts overran the road to the Golden Gate. And for this, behold, infirm and blind and old, with gray, uncovered head, beneath the very arch of my triumphal march, I stand and beg my bread. Methinks I still can hear, sounding distinct and near, the Vandal monarch's cry, as captive and disgraced, with majestic step he paced. All is vanity. Ah, vainest of all things is the gratitude of kings. The plaudits of the crowd are but the clatter of feet at midnight in the street, hollow and restless and loud. But the bitterest disgrace is to see forever the face of the monk of Ephesus. The unconquerable will, this too can bear. I still am Belisarius. That was Belisarius by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. One of his many poems about ancient historical figures or mythical figures. And the poems are nice, I guess. Mostly they sound very nice, but I usually am not familiar with the histories that he's recounting, so I find it a little bit difficult to enjoy those poems. I suppose that's my problem and not Longfellow's skill issue. Next up, we have a poem called Songo River. Nowhere such a devious stream, save in fancy or in dream, winding slow through bush and brake, links together lake and lake. Walled with woods or sandy shelf, ever doubling on itself, flows the stream, so still and slow that it hardly seems to flow. Never errant knight of old, lost in woodland or on wold, such a winding path pursued through the sylvan solitude. Never schoolboy in his quest after hazelnut or nest, through the forest in and out, wandered loitering thus about. In the mirror of its tide, tangled thickets on each side hang inverted, and between, floating cloud or sky serene. Swift or swallow on the wing seems the only living thing, or the loon that laughs and flies down to those reflected skies. Silent stream, thy Indian name unfamiliar is to fame, for thou hidest here alone, well content to be unknown. But thy tranquil waters teach wisdom deep as human speech, moving without haste or noise, in unbroken equipoise. Though thou turnest no busy mill, and art ever calm and still, even thy silence seems to say to the traveler on his way, traveler, hurrying from the heat of the city, stay thy feet, rest a while, nor longer waste life with inconsiderate haste. Be not like a stream that brawls loud with shallow waterfalls, but in quiet self-control link together soul and soul. That's the type of poem that I like from Longfellow. That was called Songo River. This next poem is quite long. It's called Keramos. And I think we have time to read it, so I will take a moment to have some water and then we'll get started. Keramos. Turn, turn, my wheel, turn round and round, without a pause, without a sound. So spins the flying world away. This clay, well mixed with marl and sand, follows the motion of my hand. Far some must follow and some command, though all are made of clay. Thus sang the potter at his task, beneath the blossoming hawthorn tree, while o'er his features like a mask, the quilted sunshine and leaf shade moved as though the boughs above him swayed, and clothed him till he seemed to be a figure woven in tapestry. So sumptuously was he arrayed, that in that magnificent attire of sable tissue flaked with fire, like a magician he appeared, a conjurer without book or beard. And while he plied his magic art, for it was magical to me, I stood in silence and apart, and wondered more and more to see that shapeless, lifeless mass of clay rise up to meet the master's hand, and now contract and now expand, and even his slightest touch obey, while ever in a thoughtful mood he sang his ditty, and at times whistled a tune between the rhymes as a melodious interlude. Turn, turn, my wheel, all things must change to something new, to something strange. Nothing that is can pause or stay. The moon will wax, the moon will wane. The mist and cloud will turn to rain. The rain to mist and cloud again. Tomorrow be today. Thus still the potter sang, and still, by some unconscious act of will, the melody and even the words were intermingled with my thought, as bits of colored thread are caught and woven into nests of birds. And thus to regions far remote, beyond the ocean's vast expanse, this wizard in the motley coat transported me on wings of song, and by the northern shores of France bore me with restless speed along. What land is this that seems to be a mingling of the land and sea? This land of sluices, dikes, and dunes, this water net that tessellates the landscape, this unending maze of gardens through whose latticed gates the imprisoned pinks and tulips gaze, where in the long summer afternoons the sunshine, softened by the haze, comes streaming down as through a screen, where over fields and pastures green the painted ships float high in air, and over all and everywhere the sails of windmills sink and soar like wings of seagulls on the shore. What land is this? Yon pretty town is Delft, with all its wares displayed, the pride, the marketplace, the crown, and center of the potter's trade. See, every house and room is bright with glimmers of reflected light from plates that on the dresser shine, flagons to foam with Flemish beer, or sparkle with the Rhenish wine, and pilgrim flask with fleur-de-lis, and ships upon a rolling sea, and tankards pewter-topped and queer, with comic mask and musketeer. Each hospitable chimney smiles a welcome from its painted tiles. The parlor walls, the chamber floors, the stairways and the corridors, the borders of the garden walks, are beautiful with fadeless flowers that never droop in winds or showers, and never wither on their stalks. Turn, turn, my wheel, all life is brief. What now is bud will soon be leaf. What now is leaf will soon decay. The wind blows east, the wind blows west. The blue eyes in the robin's nest will soon have wings and beak and breast, and flutter and fly away. Now, southward through the air I glide, the song my only pursuivant, and see across the landscape wide the blue Charente, upon whose tide the belfries and the spires of saints ripple and rock from side to side, as when an earthquake rends its walls, a crumbling city reels and falls. Who is it in the suburbs here, this potter working with such cheer? In this mean house, this mean attire, his manly features bronzed with fire, whose figurines and rustic wares scarce find him bread from day to day. This madman, as the people say, who breaks his tables and his chairs to feed his furnace fires, nor cares who goes unfed if they are fed, nor who may live if they are dead. This alchemist, with hollow cheeks and sunken, searching eyes, who seeks by mingled earths and ores, combined with potency of fire to find some new enamel, hard and bright, his dream, his passion, his delight. O Palissy, within thy breast burned the hot fever of unrest. Thine was the prophet's vision, thine the exaltation, the divine insanity of noble minds, that never falters nor abates, but labors and endures and waits till all that it foresees it finds, or what it cannot find creates. Turn, turn, my wheel, this earthen jar a touch can make, a touch can mar. And shall it to the potter say, what makest thou? Thou hast no hand. As men who think to understand a world by their Creator planned, who wiser is than they. Still guided by the dreamy song. As in a trance I float along. Above the Pyrenean chain, above the fields and farms of Spain, above the bright Majorcan isle that lends its softened name to art, a spot, a dot upon the chart, whose little towns red-roofed with tile are ruby-lustered with the light of blazing furnaces by night, and crowned by day with wreaths of smoke. Then eastward, wafted in my flight, on my enchanter's magic cloak, I sail across the Tyrrhene Sea into the land of Italy, and o'er the windy Apennines, mantled and musical with pines. The palaces, the princely halls, the doors of houses and the hall balls of churches and of belfry towers, cloister and castle, street and mart, are garlanded and gay with flowers that blossom in the fields of art. Here Gubbio's workshops gleam and glow with brilliant iridescent dyes, the dazzling whiteness of the snow, the cobalt blue of summer skies. And vase and scutcheon, cup and plate, in perfect finish emulate Faenza, Florence, Pesaro. Forth from Urbino's gate there came a youth with the angelic name of Raphael, in form and face himself angelic and divine, in arts of color and design. From him Francesco Zanto caught something of his transcendent grace, and into fictile fabrics wrought suggestions of the master's thought. Nor less Maestro Giorgio shines with madre pearl and golden lines of arabesques and interweaves his birds and fruits and flowers and leaves about some landscape shaded brown with olive tints on rock and town. Behold this cup within whose bowl, upon a ground of deepest blue, with yellow lustered stars o'erlaid, colors of every tint and hue mingle in one harmonious whole. With large blue eyes and steadfast gaze, her yellow hair in net and braid, necklace and earrings all ablaze with golden luster o'er the glaze, a woman's portrait on the scroll, Cana the beautiful, a name forgotten for such brief fame as this memorial can bestow. A gift some lover long ago gave with his heart to this fair dame. A nobler title to renown is thine, O pleasant Tuscan town, seated beside the Arno stream. For Luca della Rabbia there created forms so wondrous fair, they made thy sovereignty supreme. These choristers with lips of stone, whose music is not heard but seen, still chant as from their organ screen their maker's praise, nor these alone, but the more fragile forms of clay, hardly less beautiful than they. These saints and angels that adorn the walls of hospitals and tell the story of good deeds so well that poverty seems less forlorn, and life more like a holiday. Here, in this old neglected church that long eludes the traveler's search, lies the dead bishop on his tomb. Earth upon earth he slumbering lies, lifelike and deathlike in the gloom. Garlands of fruit and flowers in bloom, and foliage deck his resting place. A shadow in the sightless eyes, a pallor on the patient face, made perfect by the furnace heat. All earthly passions and desires burned out by purgatorial fires, seeming to say, our years are fleet, and to the weary, death is sweet. But the most wonderful of all the ornaments on tomb or wall that grace the fair Ausonian shores are those the faithful earth restores. Near some Apulian town concealed in vineyard or in harvest field, vases and urns and bas reliefs, memorials of forgotten griefs, or records of heroic deeds of demigods and mighty chiefs, figures that almost move and speak, and buried amid mold and weeds, still in their attitudes attest the presence of the graceful Greek. Achilles in his armor dressed, Alcides with the Cretan bull, and Aphrodite with her boy, or lovely Helena of Troy, still living and still beautiful. Turn, turn, my wheel, 'tis nature's plan. The child should grow into the man grow wrinkled, old, and gray. In youth the heart exalts and sings. The pulses leap, the feet have wings. In age the cricket chirps and brings the harvest home of day. And now the winds that southward blow and cool the hot Sicilian isle bear me away. I see below the long line of the Libyan Nile, flooding and feeding the parched land with annual ebb and overflow. A fallen palm whose branches lie beneath the Abyssinian sky, whose roots are in Egyptian sands. On either bank, huge water wheels, belted with jars and dripping weeds, send forth their melancholy moans, as if in their gray mantles hid dead anchorites of the Thebaid, knelt on the shore and told their beads, beating their breasts with loud appeals and penitential tears and groans. This city, walled and thickly set, with glittering mosque and minaret, is Cairo, in whose gay bazaars the dreaming traveler first inhales the perfume of Arabian gales, and sees the fabulous earthen jars, huge as were those wherein the maid Morgana found the 40 thieves concealed in midnight ambuscade, and seeing more than half believes the fascinating tales that run through all the 1,000 nights and one, told by the fair Scheherazade. More strange and wonderful than these are the Egyptian deities, Ammon and Ameth, and the grand Osiris holding in his hand the lotus, Isis, crowned and veiled, the sacred ibis and the sphinx, bracelets with blue enameled links, the scarabee and emerald mailed, or spreading wide his funeral wings, lamps that perchance their night watch kept o'er Cleopatra while she slept, all plundered from the tombs of kings. Turn, turn, my wheel, the human race, of every tongue, of every place, Caucasian, Coptic, or Malay, all that inhabit this great earth, whatever be their rank or worth, are kindred and allied by birth, and made of the same clay. O'er desert sands, or gulf and bay, o'er Ganges and o'er Himalay, bird-like I fly, and flying sing to flowery kingdoms of Cathay, and bird-like poise on balanced wing above the town of King Te Ching, a burning town, or seeming so, 3,000 furnaces that glow incessantly and fill the air with smoke uprising gyre on gyre, and painted by the lurid glare of jets and flashes of red fire, as leaves that in the autumn fall, spotted and veined with various hues, are swept along the avenues and lie in heaps by hedge and wall. So from this grove of chimneys whirled to all the markets of the world, these porcelain weaves are wafted on, light yellow leaves with spots and stains of violet and of crimson dye, or tender azure of a sky just washed by gentle April rains, and beautiful with celadon. Nor less the coarser household wares, the willow pattern that we knew in childhood, with its bridge of blue, leading to unknown thoroughfares. The solitary man who stares at the white river flowing through its arches, the fantastic trees, and wild perspective of the view. And intermingled among these, the tiles that in our nurseries filled us with wonder and delight, or haunted us in dreams at night. And yonder by Nankin behold the tower of porcelain strange and old, uplifting to the astonished skies its ninefold painted balconies, with balustrades of twining leaves and roofs of tile, beneath whose eaves hang porcelain bells that all the time ring with a soft, melodious chime, while the whole fabric is ablaze with varied tints all fused in one great mass of color, like a maze of flowers illumined by the sun. Turn, turn my wheel, what is begun at daybreak must at dark be done. Tomorrow will be another day. Tomorrow the hot furnace flame will search the heart and try the frame, and stamp with honor or with shame these vessels made of clay. Cradled and rocked in eastern seas, the islands of the Japanese beneath me lie o'er lake and plain, the stork, the heron, and the crane. Through the clear realms of azure drift, and on the hillside I can see the villages of Amari, whose thronged and flaming workshops lift their twisted columns of smoke on high, cloud cloisters that in ruins lie, with sunshine streaming through each rift, and broken arches of blue sky. All the bright flowers that fill the land, ripple of waves on rock or sand, the snow on Fusiyama's cone, the midnight heaven so thickly sown with constellations of bright stars, the leaves that rustle, the reeds that make a whisper by each stream and lake, the saffron dawn, the sunset red are painted on these lovely jars. Again the skylark sings, again the stork, the heron, and the crane float through the azure overhead. The counterfeit and counterpart of nature reproduced in art. Art is the child of nature, yes, her darling child in whom we trace the features of the mother's face, her respect and her attitude, all her majestic loveliness, chastened and softened and subdued into a more attractive grace, and with a human sense imbued. He is the greatest artist then, whether of pencil or of pen, who follows nature, never man, as an artist or as artisan, pursuing his own fantasies, can touch the human heart or please or satisfy our nobler needs, as he who sets his willing feet in nature's footprints light and fleet, and follows fearless where she leads. Thus mused I on that morn in May, wrapped in my visions like the seer, whose eyes behold not what is near, but only what is far away. When suddenly sounding peal on peal, the church bell from the neighboring town proclaimed the welcome hour of noon. The potter heard and stopped his wheel, his apron on the grass threw down, whistled his quiet little tune, not over loud nor over long, and ended thus his simple song. Stop, stop, my wheel, too soon, too soon. The noon will be the afternoon. Too soon today be yesterday. Behind us in our path we cast the broken potsherds of the past, and all are ground to dust at last, and trodden into clay. Well, that very long poem was the final poem of Birds of Passage, Flight the Fourth. And now we have, predictably, Birds of Passage, Flight the Fifth. Which I'm not sure I will start today. I might just call that enough for the day. And start Flight the Fifth next time, which I think might be a few days from now, perhaps Thursday. I will be able to stream. But not today. So, thank you, Cookie. Hope you had fun. And I hope you found this relaxing. I will see you another day.